Hello friends. I'm Sangeeta Mulay. I'm the author of the book Savitribai Phule and I. And this book is targeted at young adults. And I'll be doing a short discussion about this book, followed by a book reading. The first topic that I would like to discuss is my position on being an anti-caste author, but not a Dalit. So I feel that cultural appropriation is a valid concern to raise and must be respected. It is important to understand the voices that may dispute your right to tell a story. So a writer must be prepared at all times to have their work heavily critiqued. I think the important thing to do is to examine the motivation of the writer. Me as a writer, why do I want to write this? Is it to initiate an anti-caste dialogue, or is it something else? Because finally, writers should not be barred from creating characters with attributes that they do not own, be it gender, caste, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or anything else. Because otherwise, fiction will become very boring. There should be no censorship in writing. Writers should be able to write on any topic that they want to without fear, but they should always be mindful and be humble. They should be sensitive and write with humility. In my experience, it was because I got the validation from a publisher like Panther's Paw that I was able to kind of go forth without any fear. The next thing is the research process. How did I research Savitribai Phule's life and also Shabri's life? So regarding Savitribai Phule, I read 3 books. One was a small booklet. It was meant for children, but it listed the major milestones of Savitri's life. The second book was called Savitribai, India's Conversation on Education. It was written by Tom Wolfe and Suzanne Andrade. And the third book that I read was written by Jyotiba Phule. Now, I read these books to try and understand the kind of person that Savitri was. But finally, I ended up using the information only to get the major milestones in her life, and I weaved my narrative around it. Regarding Shabri, there was one article in particular which inspired me to create this character. That article was about the challenges faced by Dalit and rural students in institutes of higher education. This article had been published just after Rohit Vemula's death. And it was an important article, and it could only be labeled as an eye-opener. I wanted every urban student to read it. At that point, I could only share it via social media, but it kind of stayed with me, and that is what inspired me to write Shabri's character. So the Dalit, Bahujan, and Adiwasi student experience. Now, I wanted to write about a girl who was at the lowest rung on the privilege scale. Unfortunately, the experience of Shabri is all too common on college campuses. I have seen it. When I was in college, I have seen it. It is not always about the caste, but you can be less privileged in a variety of ways. Your English speaking skills, your clothes, the money that you have in your purse, where you stay, your accent, all these can be used against you. So I have seen people mocked for their clothes and English speaking skills when I was in college. And these incidents stay with you in some way. Often the urban students have no idea of the challenges that someone like Shabri faces. So this book is an attempt to make the privileged young students aware, understand, and finally acknowledge their caste and other privileges. It is an attempt to change the narrative from reforming the Dalit to instead reforming the upper caste. So, parallels between Shabri and Savitribai. The similarities between the two are many, and so are the struggles that they faced. So, I wanted to draw this parallel. Now, both the women are fascinated by ideas. Savitri's life becomes richer as she becomes literate, and she becomes fascinated with books and reading. Shabri discovers feminism and activism and gets introduced to atheism. And both the women remain staunch feminists, but the struggle for them is all too real. And unfortunately, we can see that the challenges that were present in Savitribai's times are still very much present today. Dalit role models in children's literature. So it is crucial to have representation and inspiring role models for children. I did a little bit of research, and I was glad to find a picture book. So that is for very young children, a picture book on Ambedkar. Then Turning the Pot by Kancha Ilya is another fascinating book which challenges the caste system. So there are books being created. Publishers are making an attempt to bring out these books for children to read. But there needs to be much, much more. Um, Not only role models, but important issues like caste, feminism, privilege also need to be tackled in children's books. Books that you read as a child tend to stay with you, and it is a lost opportunity if publishers do not utilize the wide canvas that they have available. Avoiding the Savarna savior narrative. Um, how I have handled this in my book is that Bhuvan, Shabri's friend, is upper caste, and he tutors her um, so that she understands the subject and understands how to answer the exam questions. But then Shabri hears a girl taunting her by saying that Shabri could only pass because it was upper caste Bhuvan who was helping her. And Shabri wants to prove to herself, as well as the reader, that she's capable enough to do this on her own. So she refuses Bhuvan's help and then succeeds on her own. The taunt that the girl makes against Shabri was my way of pointing out to the readers that I'm aware that this could be seen as a, Savarna savior narrative. So I wanted to put a stop to it right there in the book. I don't think I was massively successful in doing that from the various reviews that I got. But I was very much aware while I was writing the book that I did not want it to look like a, savior narrative. Celebrating Savitribai. So, what are the different ways in which we can celebrate Savitribai? Now, the government of Maharashtra has declared a Savitri Utsav, which would be celebrated every year on Savitribai's birthday, which was on the 3rd of Jan. I think this is a very good start. The aim is to create an awareness about her, which is very much needed, because when I read the reviews of my book, I do find a lot of girls saying that they never knew that Savitri Bai contributed so much for girls' education. So there is definitely a lack of awareness, and Savitri Bai's story is inspiring. And when more and more people understand the tremendous contribution that she has made to education, that in itself will be her celebration. Anti-caste publishing, a starting point for institutional change. Most definitely. I think anti-casteism needs to be normalized. Panther's Publishing has taken on this very important role of being India's anti-caste publisher. I would like to see similar children's imprints dedicated to publishing anti-caste books. Change will happen when the anti-caste narrative is normalized. Traditional publishing and the space for anti-caste children's fiction. A lot still remains to be done. There are traditional children's book publishers which are publishing wonderful children's books on a host of issues related to the minorities. But I think this hush, hush, softly, softly approach towards caste needs to go. The ugliness of caste discrimination needs to be spelt out via books. And I'm not even speaking of young adults here. Even picture books that target very young children can tackle this topic. If children get used to reading books which constantly reiterate this fact, then things will only change for the better. We have the example of racism in the US, UK. There are numerous books dedicated to racism. And there are numerous books that tackle racism. And this is for all age groups. So we need something similar in India. With that, I've finished the discussion on the book. I'll now move to the book reading. I've selected two passages. One is on Savitribai and the other one is on Shabri. Though the first passage is about Savitribai. We started our first school at the Chiplundkar Wada today. There had always been the worry at the back of my mind that it was all very well to start the school, but what if no girls attend? Attitudes against girls' education were still firmly entrenched in the minds of all, and I wasn't sure that we would succeed in attracting students. I was jubilant to discover that 8 girls attended our very first batch on the first day of school. The girls were as excited as I was. From that day, I embarked on my career as a teacher. Since we were always going to be short of teachers, Vishnupant Bhauji and Vitthal Bhauji taught along with me. We also started training older girls to enable them to become teachers. The challenges we faced were unique. After the initial excitement of attending school, I was alarmed to discover that some of the girls started to lose interest. Often they remained absent for frivolous reasons. Rama did not attend for 4 days because she visited a fair in Mulshi. Kashi stayed away for a week because she had to help her mother cook food for the guests who had come in. Some girls just got bored. Often their families dissuaded them from attending school. Both the girls and their parents simply could not see the importance of an education. 2 girls were thinking of dropping out. We realized that poverty played a large role in the decision of the girls and their parents. They simply could not afford to lose the benefit of the domestic work that the girls did at home. We started paying the girls in order to come and study. Funds were scarce, but there was no other way. We also revamped the entire curriculum to try and make it more interesting. We introduced games, jokes, we laughed, we played, and we learned. The parents were included too. We organized workshops for them so that they could see the benefits of a good education. Jyotiba thought that it would be a good idea to provide vocational training to the girls so that they could be independent and self-reliant after having learned a trade. We therefore decided to attach an industrial department to the school whose main aim was to provide useful trades and crafts to the girls. It was not easy. As soon as we sorted out one challenge, another difficulty presented itself. It was difficult, but we were making slow and steady progress. These are some of the best moments of my life. So this was Savitribai's passage. I will now read a passage from Shabri's life. The setting is the College of Engineering, somewhere in the city a long time ago. The professor had written a complicated looking math problem on the blackboard. Meticulously, I bent over my notebook and took the step by step approach in trying to solve it, one step after another. No need to panic, just take the logical and analytical approach. Step by step, I arrived at a solution. With a great sense of achievement, I looked at my final answer. Now, who would like to try and solve that? The professor keenly took us all in as he surveyed the classroom with the chalk still in his hand. You, the finger pointed at me. Agonizingly, I rose. With a shaking voice, in halting English, I started to explain the first step. There was a smile on his lips. Emboldened, I went on to explain the second. The smile remained. Feeling much more confident now, in a slightly louder tone, I explained the third step. Was the smile turning into a smirk? Could I hear someone giggle behind me in the class? Shakily, I finished the last step and told him the final answer to the math problem. He was laughing now. The class was snickering too. And girls and boys, this is what happens when our country insists on giving reservations to undeserving, inept candidates. Reservations are dragging this country down to unforeseen depths. He almost spat out the last bit. The heat in the room started to stifle. My mind wandered. I had seen a goat being butchered once. The image of the gory animal carcass came to mind. I could almost smell the accompanying overpowering stink of blood and hear the cries of anguish. The room went dark. Almost unwillingly, I came out of my reverie. Now I could hear the ever pervasive sounds of traffic somewhere behind the windows. Some happy person outside was listening to a popular song on the radio. A baby was crying somewhere, the innocent, harmless noise of everyday life. There was no way to look, so I kept my eyes lowered. Justifiably, I could sense the eyes of the entire classroom on me. I knew there could not be a single sympathetic gaze there. I was the only reservation candidate. All the others had got there on pure merit. She has got the sum spectacularly wrong, said the professor, smirking some more. Thankfully, he did not bring up the topic of reservations again. Neha, would you care to explain the problem to us, please? Neha, one of the brighter students in the class, got up. Cheery sunshine filled the dreary classroom. In flawless English, she went on to explain each step of the problem and then stated the final solution, which was correct. The professor was right. I had been spectacularly off the mark. I did not raise my eyes for the remaining duration of the class. As soon as the bell rang, I bolted away from the smirks, determined never to come back. So that was the end of the passage. And with that, I end this discussion. Thank you all very much for attending this. Thank you. Bye.